Welcome to the Mountain Dude Podcast, brought to you by Initial Ascent, where we share stories of grit, determination, and the relentless pursuit of growth. This is a space where backcountry hunting meets the deeper lessons of life. Success born from struggle and the art of carrying heavy loads more comfortably, both physically and metaphorically, through faith and perseverance. Join us as we explore the paths that shape us, celebrate victories big and small, and fuel our journey with hope and tenacity. This is the Mountain Dude Podcast, where we climb higher together.
Solo hunting season recap. Spent a ton of time hunting in August and September. I'm going to recap antelope hunting and elk hunting. And that's probably essentially going to be a wash for me this year. I might try to get out I'm definitely going to get out to try to help my wife fill a cow elk tag. But that'll be quick day trips, nothing crazy. We are in the process of buying a house, so that's essentially put a kibosh to any other plans that I've had, which is all right. I have a baby coming, my second kid coming early November. So the plan was to try to get out at the end of October, but that's changed because of the house opportunity, which is a blessing. I'm not complaining about it. And I've got to spend a lot of time in the field already. And we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about lessons and takeaways and what I've learned and some of the really cool experiences I've had, some of the highs and lows, because you know that comes with hunting. But before we get to that, let's pray. Dear gracious Father, I'm so grateful for all the things that you've given me in life, Lord. I ask that you just forgive me for any of my shortcoming, Lord, and I just ask that you may use me in any way that you see fit. I'm so blessed by your presence, and I just ask that you may reach out and touch those that are listening, Lord, that you may let them feel a little extra strength, and may you just be with their families and guide them as they continue to go on life. Lord, I love you. I ask that you may just use me as a lighthouse for your love to just show your wonderful grace. Say things humbly in the name of Jesus. Amen. Okay, so my 2025 season, obviously we've already recapped bear hunt and my spring. So we will just get to August because that's when the next hunt was. And this August, I spent some time antelope hunting, which I do probably every 3 years. I end up archery on antelope. It doesn't happen a ton because as soon as September hits, I want to chase bulls. But there are a couple opportunities in Idaho for an early season antelope hunt, August 15th. And every few years I'll put in for it because it's a fun hunt. But it's one of those hunts that is easy to draw. So you'll run into a lot of people. But I really like to hunt this tag spot-and-stalk. I would definitely have better luck if I hunted them over water, but it makes me a better bow hunter, in my opinion. Gives me a ton of experience and makes me feel super confident when I go into September because antelope are so switched on. They see everything. They really do. Their vision is incredible. I feel like the terrain and the topography that they live in, they're so hard to kill with a bow. They're so hard to get into bow range. And then from my experience, they duck the string unlike any other animal I've ever seen. And we'll talk about a scenario that happens, but I really like chasing them. That's like the animal that has avoided me. That's going to change. I'm going to try to devote some more time in the future to make sure that I do get it done. But yeah, that is an animal that I have not quite been able to kill with my bow yet. And it's got me kind of laser focused on figuring out how I can do that. So what I like to do with that hunt is my dad runs a ton of acreage, farms a ton of acreage in Idaho. And he's got some stuff that kind of landlocks some BLM. That there's not a ton of antelope out there. We usually don't see a ton of goats. Like there'll be 2 or 3 goats in one section and then maybe 4 to 8 in another section. So there's not a lot of them. But the nice part is they don't get pressured. So I spend a ton of time hunting those goats whenever I do draw these tags or decide to go after them during the general hunt. This year I spent 7 total days hunting. So I went out the first 3-day weekend. Season opened on a Friday. Backtrack, actually. I went out the weekend before, scouted it, found some good bucks, found one really, really big buck. Probably the best buck that I've seen out there ever. Really good buck. And I don't know antelope super well, but this buck's clearly better than any of the other bucks that I've ever seen out there. And I'm not going to pretend like I know antelope super well, but he was a stud, and he was actually in a different farmer's field. So what I decided I was going to do when I first got out there, I got out there the night before opening morning, is I was just going to go door knock, talk to the local farmers. And I did. I ran into one guy, driving by his field, asked for permission. He gave me permission to hunt any of his fields. Went door knocked another guy's house. He gave me the same response. Both farmers are like, "You can't get within bow range of those things unless you're setting up a blind." He's like, "Yep, if you can get in bow range, you go ahead and shoot them on my place." So I got permission to hunt multiple fields that were next to my dad's, and then obviously all the BLM is where they like to bed usually during the day. So I go out for that first 3-day trip solo, find that really good buck opening morning, and doesn't end up happening, and I decide I'm going to be patient. There's no great opportunity. Chase him around. There is another buck that Roger and I, when we had scouted, saw on the backside, essentially. So there's some desert section that kind of goes towards one of my dad's straw fields, and then he's got potatoes also in that field. Beets. So they like to hit the desert, and then they'll hit the beet or the straw field. If they end up in the beet or the straw field, there's literally nothing you can do because there's no topography, and they'll spend all day out there essentially. So from my experience, the best way to kill these things is to ambush them, cut them off at a point. I've also done this not just on the ag field side, but in private, in public. If you can find a crossing point where antelope are consistently crossing, I really like to hunt them spot and stalk that way. But especially in this scenario where you know that they're going to want to go to a field to water throughout the day or to eat. And so the hard part about this was there's 2 fields that kind of L out there, and this buck on this lower section would stay in the desert, and then there's like numerous different crossings because there's 2 different gates on both fields, and then they'll also cross in between the gates just depending on what their mood is. I was solo this first weekend, and I knew Matthew, who had also got the tag, was going to come up the next weekend. So my goal was to try to save that buck for him to try to hunt, because I knew it wasn't going to get a ton of pressure because you'd have to go through private, and nobody else had permission from my dad's place. So I hunted the buck that I got permission on from door knocking, because again, I knew nobody else had permission other than me at that point. And he was a really big buck. So I spent a ton of time trying to get in on him. I was really, really patient. That buck ends up leaving the field that I have permission on, I think day 2 or 3, goes into the desert, and then actually crosses a section and goes into one of my dad's spud fields. And he gets into a spot on one of those spud fields where he beds on the other side of some brush. So it's the outside of this pivot. He beds on the desert side, so he's in the sage, but there's a ton of kind of overgrowth and sage that's grown up between the pivot and that desert. Or between the end of the pivot and that desert. I knew that I could circle around on the low side of the field and make a really long stalk through that field and then potentially get into bow range. And I knew when I got to that point, when they crossed to go back to the upper section of the desert where they like to go, that they had to cross within 100 yards. So I was taking the chance that they were going to be in bow range when they did that crossing. So I was testing the sheep feet stealth bombers this year, and mixed review on those, mixed feelings on those. In the high country, they are legit. In this desert country, I really liked them because they have more padding and they're more comfortable than a lot of stocking shoes that I've used in the past. But I didn't like that they were so short, so I got cheatgrass in my socks and in the stocking shoe all the time, especially in this desert country. But the other thing that I did like about having them in the desert country is I essentially lived in them half the time because I could find antelope and then just go on a stalk because I'm glassing antelope from the truck. So kind of a give and a take with them. But anyways, throw the sheep feet stealth bombers on, make a stalk through this potato field, get to the other side of some brush and sit down. Wind's good. Wind's in my face. I don't know. I can't see where they're at, but the last spot that I left them, they should be down to my left. It's probably been 3 minutes or so of me sitting there, and I hear a doe snort as soon as the wind switches. And so I know they've got me pegged, and they're probably going to bust. So I kind of peek my head up. Sure enough, there's a buck out there. Range, get a bad range. Didn't know that in the moment, but come to full draw, stand up, shoot. Arrow feels incredible. Shoots right underneath him. Like clearly watched it go right underneath him. Boom, buck takes off. Does take off, gone. There goes blown stock number 1. This is like early afternoon. I let those buck and doe relocate, go turn them up again. They're in another section of desert between 2 fields. I had permission to hunt both those fields. One's one of my dad's fields, and the other is a hay field that I got permission on. So they're between there. I end up deciding to go make a play on them. I do. I make a big stalk all the way around. As soon as I get into a position where I feel really, really good, I know that they're probably going to cross in this little ravine that crosses this desert to go to one of those 2 fields. One of the workers for the fields, of course, drives down the road, bumps the buck. He runs out. He's 125 yards from me when they run out. And I'm not kidding you. I had made like a 1.5 mile stalk. It's nothing crazy, but I bump them. They run directly to my pickup and cross within 30 yards of my pickup. Like I literally walked back afterwards and ranged their tracks, and it was 27 yards from my tailgate. And the funniest part about that is they didn't just cross right next to my pickup, cross the road right there. They stopped and milled around for like 15 minutes while I was sitting out here in the desert just cooking, and they're milling around my pickup. Just kind of funny, but antelope are so switched on, man. It's so cool to watch. Like even just the way they behave, they'll walk around and they're just in tune to everything. So that happens. I pushed every single weekend and every single day to last light. So I had 3 weekends, and I had this, obviously was one of them, this 3-day weekend, and I pushed it until Sunday night at dark. And then I made the 2-hour drive back to my house at dark, and then got up to work Monday morning super early. But it's just, I know how fast it can happen, and I want to try to give myself every opportunity that I can. So I made sure to hunt till dark every single weekend. So I hunt till dark that night. No other play, no other good scenario, but I'm feeling really confident because I've got these antelope patterned, right? I know what the buck number 2 is, what we'll call him, the farther side buck. And then the buck that I ended up calling the broken heart buck, because he literally comes together and almost touches at the top. And I call him a broken heart buck because his antlers look like, or his horns look like a buck, but, a heart, but he also broke my heart multiple times. So it's fitting. Anyways, those 2 bucks I had pretty well patterned at this point. So I was feeling pretty confident. Leave, come back, or go to work all week, and then come back for my second weekend. And at this point, this is when Matthew is back out with me, right? So we get out super early that morning. I think, we ended up deciding to drive out really early that morning instead of driving out the night before, just to make sure we spent that one extra night with the family. So it worked out good. We get out super early before daylight. I end up making a drive, and I find that buck like all the way across one of the hay fields that he's been at. But the other thing that I should have pointed out is he's had 3 does with him all the time. Like every time I've ever seen him, he's had 3 does with him. I find this buck again, and he is all by himself. It's like right at first light, and those does are nowhere to be seen. And so I'm like, what in the world? And they have to kind of cross this it's not a main road, but this a road to get from one hayfield to the other. They're both on the north and the south side of the road. And I know he likes to go back and forth between the 2 of them. It's a paved road. That doesn't get a ton of traffic just from the farm crew essentially for all these farms back there. So I kind of watch him for like 30 seconds, and he turns and he just starts making a beeline, like not a dead run, but he starts a trot to go to the south side. And I'm like, there's one gate to cross. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's where he's going to end up. And I'm watching him, and he's like on a mission, and he's only like 600 yards from me. So it's like right at the beginning of first light. So I make a split second decision. I'm like, I'm just going to pull up into that gate. These antelope are super used to trucks because all the farm hands, and I'm just going to jump out of the pickup and see what happens. I fly up into the gate, jump out, and as I do, I can see him still coming in at like 250 yards. I grab my bow, look up, he's at like 100 yards. I duck behind the truck, kind of work around to the back side, and as I do that, he is clearly still coming in. I come to full draw, walk out from behind the pickup, stand up, and as I do that, he stops, and I estimated him at like 31, 32 yards. I shoot, he takes off, clearly not hit, and I'm like, that he had to have been, I had to have been really close range wise, and I'm like, there is no way. What happened? And that all happened so fast. That moment can go really, really quick. And I'm like trying to figure out what happened in my head. Luckily, I was wearing a GoPro. So I walk over there. I know he's not hit, but I go do my due diligence. I double check. No blood. I watch him run off. No blood. He's not hit. And I turn around, range where I was standing from where his tracks are, and it's 34 yards. I'm like, that should have been money. Went through my shot process. Know that shot felt really good. I'm like, that buck should be dead. Go back, watch the GoPro footage, and this buck did what bucks have done to me in the past. He ducked my string, like clearly ducked at 34 yards, and I missed him completely. And you talk about the highs and the lows. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I've missed this buck twice now. One was a bad range. One he ducked. And it is so hard to get inside a bow range on antelope, spot and stalk. But to miss twice, I was absolutely devastated. Like, I really did not feel good. But it's part of it. So I kind of regroup, pull up my bootstraps, get back to work. He takes off into the hayfield. He ended up actually picking his does up in that hayfield on the south. So I don't know if he was just lollygagging or if he was cruising trying to find more does when I cut him off. But long story short, he ends up back with those does. So he goes through the hayfield further south into some desert country out there. And this is desert country that I hadn't hunted much. So I go spend some time over there, and I end up locating him way further south into the desert, and I see them before they see me, which is like, that's like the golden rule, not just with antelope hunting, but like anything, especially archery hunting. Like, you have to see critters before they see you, because it just puts you in so much of a better situation. You're always caught off guard, even if it's within bow range when they see you first. So I try to be really diligent, take my time, make sure that I see animals before they see me, because then I can come up with a game plan. So I see this buck in his does, and I make the decision. I am going to try to work my way down, because this country is actually perfect to hunt them in if you can see them first, because there's a ton of rolling hills and topography in this desert that he's in now. And there's this one big ravine, and it's probably 60 yards from the top to the bottom, like shooting wise, right? So I see them kind of circle and go to the backside of this ravine, going up the ravine. So I zip across this little drainage, get to the top of that ridge, look down in there, see him before they see me. I did a good job of not making myself clearly skylined. Get a range on him. It's like 62 yards. I'm like, oh yeah, done deal. I feel great in this scenario. Come to full draw. Creep over to the edge, stand up. As soon as I stand up, there was no pause whatsoever. They literally just bolted. They all take off, get to like 110 yards, and they didn't know what I was. It was simply the fact that something had skylined above them. That prey instinct took off, right? They bounced. And so They ended up circling and staying at like 130 yards for an extended period of time. And eventually they worked their way out. And I didn't end up having another play on that buck that weekend. If I remember correctly, Matt and I started hunting that buck number 2 quite a bit, and we were trying to get him an opportunity on that. So, like, for example, I would sit one section of the fence, he would sit another section of the fence, hoping they would cross in one of our areas. They literally never did. They never read the script. They would cross in some random spot that I've never seen them cross before, and just not knowing we're even there. That's just, I feel like they changed their behavior a lot because of the amount of times they get bumped out of those fields with guys changing water or doing something with the crop. So they like to change their crossing points a lot. And sometimes it'll make no sense. Like, they'll literally be headed for that open gate, and then they'll just walk the fence line or walk 100 yards from the fence, circle, and then cross literally in the middle when they're 75 yards from an open gate. So they do a ton of that, just kind of random stuff. But that weekend comes to an end, and again, I stayed till dark, wanted to try to make sure I gave myself every opportunity. And then the last weekend is the last 2 days of the season. We ended up finishing up a really big job, and I was able to zip out for the last 2 full days. And of course, we get out there, and Matthew gets a flat tire right off the bat. He's only going to be there for the first day, and then he's got to go home before the final day. And that's just how things go, right? We get out there, Matt gets a flat tire, and I never saw that broken-hearted buck again. I found his does every day. I have no idea where that buck went. And I don't think he got killed, because I don't see a whole ton of people going and knocking on those farmers' doors and getting permission. And I don't know if they would have given permission. Who knows? But that buck disappeared, like totally gone, ghosted. And so we ended up spending more time trying to get on that buck number 2. A couple of times had some really good opportunities that day. A couple of times had some stalks that day, but no good opportunities. Matt has to take off that night, and then I wake up the next morning and have a scenario where that buck is in the desert before he goes into the field, which is perfect. That's my preference. Once they get out in that straw field, it's literally flat. Like, there's nothing you can do. So I end up making a play on him in the desert, get to 70, and things just don't work out. They ended up seeing me first, and I don't end up getting a shot on him. They busted. So that happens. I hunt all of that day. I end up going and finding one more buck and end up getting into bow range of another buck. And this buck's just a decent buck. He's about the size of buck number 2, maybe a little bit smaller, out in the desert, not near any of these farm fields. But I ended up putting a stock on him. He's got like 30 does. Put a stock on them, get one doe at 52 yards, and I could see him, like his head, as I belly crawled through the sage. Because something that seems to work really well for me is it's like the micro topography and in desert country that is a game changer for you. Like, you have these little bitty swells where you can like get down and essentially crawl on your hands and knees or belly crawl that will get you that final distance to get in bow range. And if you can get a buck and some does to bed in one of those scenarios, that works out great. This is what happened there. They go to the other side of this little micro topography, and I essentially belly crawled for 200 yards. I was able to walk a long distance into it, or not a long, about a mile. And then I was able to belly crawl that last like 200 yards because of where they were at. And I belly crawled my way up, got up to one point on this little micro topography. See does, can see him further down like 120 yards. So I belly crawled out and then went further down and belly crawled in on him. And when I got in there, I could see his head, and I knew he was just on the other side of this doe. Well, at this point, I'm a little bit devastated with the bad range and the miss. So my whole thing is like, I'm going to get a range. I don't want to make a bad shot on these animals, and they're so turned on. So I make the decision to kind of peek up through some sage and get a range. And I range this doe at 52 yards, and I know he's like a couple of yards behind her. Like, I'm comfortable in this scenario, right? I thought he was about 56. So dial to 56, draw, stand up. And as soon as I stand up, they're at like 115. Course. I got busted ranging her more than likely and just didn't see it. And so as soon as I stood up, they were already on their way out. But It was good. I had some people ask me, one of my buddies texted me and he's like, dude, how do I get better at stalking animals? And I was like, you need to go buy an antelope tag. Like, you need to blow a ton of stalks and get experience on like one of the most switched on critters I've ever hunted, because they are so hard to get within bow range. So one of those biggest takeaways that I have is, once you stalk antelope, like now you go into September or hunting deer or elk, and they feel so much easier. Like, you feel like you can get away with more, but I also feel like you don't have to get away with more because you're more turned on as well, and just switched in that mindset. So that is one of the huge takeaways that I get when I hunt antelope. And then patience kills, man. Every single time I was impatient and tried to rush things, it never works out. The times that I was able to get in bow range was when I was patient, and when I waited, and when I felt like I didn't want to wait. I'm like, maybe I'll just go. If I waited, it almost always worked out to put me in a good position. If I didn't, it never worked out for me. And that's something that I've experienced in the past as well. So, and then the last little takeaway I have with that antelope hunting is, don't let the highs and the lows, like, don't let the highs be too high and the lows be too low. Like, that is so easy to say, but so hard to do. So hard to do. Like, it really is difficult. But it's important to try to stay grounded and stay mentally turned on, so that way you're not at the peak where it's, you're making bad decisions because you're all excited and things are super amped. But in those lows, it's super easy to quit. And then if you can keep yourself grounded and kind of in a neutral state, I'm not saying don't get excited, or don't not get excited, and don't be emotional about things. Like, that's okay. But try to keep yourself grounded, because I think you're going to make more rational decisions. It's going to be more effective. But August ends with that tag, and I move into archery elk. And my main goal this year was, I wanted to get Matthew his first elk with a bow. Matt spent so much time helping me last year. He was there when I killed my bull. He was there when I killed my buck. And those were 2 hunts where he didn't even have a tag. He literally just committed time to come help me. And I'm super grateful for that. So my goal was to try to get him an elk this year. And he kept saying, like, this is your elk hunt too, like, still hunt. So I ended up buying an elk tag and going out there with him to archery elk hunt. Well, the first rip that I go out is just a quick 2-day, 1-night solo trip. Matt wasn't able to make it out for, because we had a bigger trip planned. So I go out for this quick rip, get into some country, end up spotting a bear. I love seeing bears. You guys know that. Find a bear. No elk day 1, sleep that night. Day 2, get into a pretty nice 6-point, something that I don't know, probably 280, 290 class 6-point. And he's got like 6 cows. I end up glassing him up in a timber pocket, raking at like 570 yards. Glass him up, and he's on a north face. I was glassing him from the opposite side of a little drainage, so I could circle all the way around. The problem was, we were getting into evening time, and so I knew that the thermals weren't going to be in my favor if I went above him, because I think about the time I was getting in on them, they were going to switch and start coming downhill. The problem is, I knew that they were going to feed up, just knowing this country and what the elk like to do. I knew they were probably going to feed up and over that ridge. So what I like to try to do is get on the same contour, essentially the same elevation band that elk are on. I just seem to find wind's a little bit more consistent and elk are less intimidated. So I make the decision to go down, get on the same elevation band as them. I get into like 60 yards of his cows. And at that point, I can tell that they're starting to feed up. So we start calling. He's chuckling at me. We're bugling. And the problem is, at this point, I have found oftentimes it's not the bull that I'm trying to trick in these scenarios. Like, if bull's got cows, it's the cows that I have to beat. They're the ones that are usually switched on and end up leaving. And the bull rarely leaves his cows in most scenarios, especially this early. This is early, right? So he follows his cows up the hill. They chuckle at me the whole way. I just wasn't able to keep up with them. No play. zip home. And then I have an 11-day trip planned with Matthew the next week. So we go to work all week, get all our work stuff done, and then the 11-day trip comes, right? Night one, we head into some country. Well, afternoon, we get into some country. Hike all the way into this spot that I like to get into. We get back there, and somebody had beat me back there, which, good on them. Public land hunting, no big deal. So instead of, we do the right thing. We back all the way back out instead of trying to just hunt the ridge next to them. Like this is a whole little ridge system that you're kind of hunting the whole little basin if you're hunting it, right? When you pack in. So I hike out. Instead of hunting that, we do the right thing. We hike out, go all the way to set up our base camp. We get to glassing that night, find some elk. Nothing crazy happens that night. Day two happens. We wake up, go take the long way on the four-wheeler, go to some further off country that I like to get into. And we get back there, and as soon as we do, this is like an hour and a half, hour and 15-minute four-wheeler ride. As soon as we get back there, Matthew's four-wheeler like dies. His brake locks up. Four-wheeler doesn't want to start. We start having tons of issues with it. We eventually get it pull started. Get the brake. We literally essentially turn the brake. I cut the brake essentially. I literally unscrewed his handbrake entirely, so he had no brakes. And then we limp all the way back to camp, which takes almost the entire day. We get back there that afternoon. Matthew makes a quick trip back to town. Roger actually lets Matthew borrow his four-wheeler. Shout out to Roger. That's the kind of dude that he is. Matt goes, swaps four-wheelers with Roger, comes back. And during this time, I'm still hunting. And it's more of a lot of recognizance at this point. We're trying to find the elk that we want to get into. I don't have time to make it back to the original A spot that we were going to. So we start locating some elk. That night, Matt actually gets up there, and I told him I thought he should go to a spot to do some glassing. He gets there, gets into some bulls. He finds bulls, hears bugles, and glasses some elk up. So day three happens. We wake up that morning, and there are so many people everywhere. Like, I have never experienced a public land unit like this. Like, I personally will never go back there. I don't like combat bow hunting, and I would rather have a harder time finding elk that behave like elk than seeing a ton of elk, which there is a ton of elk in this area, but they're very pressured and educated, and they really do act like it. Like, truly get a lot of elk that will bugle going away and or get quiet, and cows like have zero leniency because of the amount of people that I think they're seeing constantly. And you'll see it like evolve as September goes along, especially on this 11-day hunt. Like, early on, it's not quite as bad. By the end of those like 11 days, as we start to get into mid to the end of September, they are like super switched on. Even though the rut's picking up more, like, a lot of times, unless you give a bull a visual of another bull, like while they're bugling, those bulls or those cows essentially are the ones that are turning and walking out. But back to day three, we end up finding a bull. He's chuckling back at us. He's actually just a cruising bull that's headed, probably trying to find cows. When we first got into him, it was a long ways away. He was on the other side of a really big draw, and we had to circle all the way around to keep the wind. If we had dropped off the bottom, thermals mid-afternoon, we're just going to be pulling up, so there was no point of that. We had to circle all the way around. By the time we did, he was gone, which makes sense because I think he was just cruising for cows. So that happens. Day four, we get to a big glassing point early in the morning, and I love glassing from this point. And we glass up a really good bull, like probably 320 class bull, which is great for this unit. And we put him to bed in a timber pocket, which that's like one of my favorite strategies to hunting elk, especially pressured elk, is I like to essentially hunt them like I would a mule deer. Like I like to glass them up. Don't get me wrong. I love calling elk. Like, I love being the caller and getting elk worked up. But what I've had the most success with archery hunting elk is to hunt them quiet. Essentially put a diaphragm in my mouth, strap a bugle tube on my back, and hunt them like mule deer after I put them to bed in a timber pocket. So that's what I do. This bull has a cow and a calf. That is it. And I glassed him up, and he's like 17 or 1,800 yards away. He's a long ways. But I put him to bed in this timber pocket, and I knew he didn't go over the top. I could see if he would have, and I know he didn't exit it, right? So I know he's going to bed in there, and there's no reason for him to leave. He's going to spend all day in there. So we make the long trip around. I end up coming down in on this bull. And again, it is so important that you see animals before they see you, especially in stalking scenarios. So I'm just trying to be really patient. I get down there to where I'm like 200 yards from that timber pocket, and we get a little squall of rain that comes in. And so I kind of back out a little bit further because I know the wind's going to be super shifty during this storm. So I back out, try to be really patient. And as I'm doing that, I'm listening, because if this bull will give me his location with a bugle, a bedded bugle, then that really, really puts me in a good spot. So I'm trying to listen, trying to be patient. Don't hear anything after a couple hours. Storm's gone. It's been gone for a while. I've got a consistent uphill thermal. The wind's great. So I start my stalking in the timber pocket, and at this point, I am back in the Sheep Feet Stealth Farmers. I have a bugle tube, essentially with a lanyard strapped around my back and my bino harness and my bow. Nothing else. I dropped my pack up above, and I'm stalking in. And as I'm walking in, I end up seeing the butt of a elk kind of pass through some timber, and then I see a cow right away too. I see a cow head. So I'm like, perfect, got him. This cow's at 97 yards. So I'm assuming it's probably the bull that I had missed just before that, or never got to see because he probably wasn't all the way out. But anyways, a bull that was in that section, right, of timber. So I start sneaking my way down there. I end up getting all the way down there to where I would be like 41 yards from where they were at. She's still feeding around. Wind's perfect. Everything's going well for me. She feeds behind some timber. I sneak all the way down and kind of sit and wait, because I can hear her still feeding on the other side of this brush. She ends up circling and just kind of coming right up the end of this timber pot, or right at the end of this tree. Comes to 27 yards and then to like 23 yards. Doesn't see me. Has no idea what's going on. By this point, I'm sitting down because I know I'm in a really good position. I'm banking on the fact that I think that bull's going to come check that cow at some point. So I'm like, perfect. She beds down at 23 yards and beds there for like 45 minutes. And the whole time I'm ready, just in case that bull decides to get up. And as I'm sitting there, she's bedded. Hey, eventually she stands up, just kind of starts milling around in that area. She's like 23, 27 yards, kind of back and forth, but not going anywhere. Bull bugle's like 80 yards to my left, further into that timber pocket. So I'm like, perfect. Now I've got a really good idea where he's at. He's in trouble. And so I'm able to back out. And another little thing that I like to do a lot is, especially in this scenario, like the small things that will cover your noise are huge. So like if I'll get a big gust of wind that comes through, that's when I'll make my bigger movements. I try not to make any big movements because I think that movement's what catches attention of ungulates really quickly. But if I have to make a bigger movement to kind of get over a log or something like that I know could be noisy if I do it slowly, I'll try to wait like as long as I absolutely have to until that squall of wind comes through, or until a plane passes over or anything like that. Or sometimes I'm hunting these elk that people don't know they're there, and there will be a four-wheeler that drives by, and I will literally wait in this timber pocket while a four-wheeler drives by, and that's when I'll make my move. Because I have found that sometimes these pressured elk don't go further. They just act different. They're just quieter, and all their bugles are just kind of muffled and to themselves. So anyways, circle all the way out of this cow. She doesn't even know I'm there, doesn't even know I exist. And it's a really, really cool feeling when you feel that way, like you're inside elk in their bedroom, and you're inside like that bedroom kitchen area where these bulls have, and these elk have no idea you exist. Like it's a really special feeling. So sneak out, circle around up through this timber pocket, and then I can see this bull raking. I can see antler tips raking, and he's at like 60 yards, but I don't have shot. So I circle down. He's kind of chuckling, bugling. I get to where I would probably be within 30, and it's super thick. And I see him kind of turn now to my right to kind of go back towards that cow. And I can't tell if he lays down right there or if he keeps going, right? So I'm patient, super patient. I've probably taken 45 minutes to cover this distance anyways, so I'm in no rush. I've been essentially in bow range at this point for over 2 hours. And so I wait. And as I'm sitting there, I start hearing some branches break up above me and to my right. And keep in mind, the thermals have been blowing uphill, right? The wind has been. It's been a consistent wind, and it's the afternoon, so the thermals are also a part of that. And I'm like, no way, that bull's going to circle and come up above me. So I sneak back out. And as I sneak back out and around, I see two dudes like 45 yards from me. And they got arrows knocked, trying to sneak through this timber pocket as well. And I'm like, well, they're obviously in here sneaking for a reason. They know this bull's here. And so I wave at them, let them know, hey, we're both hunting the same elk at this point, obviously. And they had just come down from a section where I was, so I know they weren't in that timber pocket yet, right? And this is part of spot and stalk hunting. This is not part of necessarily spot and stalk hunting. This is part of public land hunting. And this is where I'm talking about. I would rather find less elk than find a ton of people on a ton of elk. So I kind of wave at them. They just stand there. So eventually, after like 25 minutes of them just standing there, I make the decision like, okay, I'm going to walk to them. Let's figure out a game plan. There's no reason for us to sit here and try to shoot the same bull at the same time. Like, let's be normal and let's have a normal conversation and figure out what we're going to do. So I sneak all the way back the distance that I've already covered, and we're kind of talking, and they're like, oh, and I'm like, obviously you guys are here. You saw the bull. And they're like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, we saw him from the other side of the ridge. I'm like, yeah, I saw him a long ways away. And I'm like, I've been in here for almost 3 hours now inside a bow range of him, because he's only like 60 yards from us now. I know he's down below us in the timber. We can't see him. We can't see his cows, but I know they're within 60 or 80 yards at this point of where I've crept back to. And so I told him, like, I showed him a video. I'm like, yeah, I had that cow bedded at 23 yards. I've been in here for a long time. And, everybody's a big kid. They get to make their own decisions. The way I was raised is just kind of like we did day one. You back out if you get beat in somewhere. Obviously, they're trying to fill a tag too. They end up deciding that they're going to stay in there. I sneak down and around. I probably, obviously I know I should have now, but I would have liked to stay on the timber pocket side that I was on, but I had a feeling they were going to keep moving the direction they were already going, which would have bumped that bull. So I decided I was going to go down in a different section, so that way if they did bump him, I was hopefully going to get a shot opportunity. They circle around, and we, after another 45 minutes, I had gotten down into position, sat in one spot for probably 25 minutes. I hear them start to cow call, and a bunch of branches break. Bull clearly takes off. The cow calls had come downwind of me, down below me. And then the calf gets up at like 17 yards from me. I didn't know that calf was there, but I knew that the bull, the cow, and the calf had just been right in this little kind of patch of thick brush, because I could hear him just kind of grunting, just doing that. And so I knew he was close. They get essentially downwind and start cow calling. At that point, things bust. It is what it is at this point. Calf jumps up, takes off. It was closer than I thought. I thought the calf was probably at like 30 something. I didn't see it. Just, this is all based off of sound, right? And so I had a little window on either side. Never ended up working out. I grabbed my bow, started hiking back out, and I was obviously upset about it at first. But it is what it is. Everybody makes decisions, and if you dwell on the negative things, I don't feel like it gets you anywhere in life. And I was the guy, keep this in mind, I used to be the guy that, like, I would almost want to fist fight people on the mountain that made certain decisions. Like, I've had guys literally try to foot race me to elk, and I'm not going to do that anymore. Like, if you really want to go kill that bull, go kill that bull. Like, I'm going to do what I feel like I should do, the ethical, moral thing to do. I don't know. That's what I feel like obligated to do essentially, because that's who I am. I'm just going to try to make the right decisions for me. And if somebody else makes that decision, then okay, like, so be it. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to cuss at you anymore. I used to be that guy. I used to want to cuss at all those guys and want to fist fight them. And there may or may not be a story that we'll have to share with Roger at some point about me nearly fist fighting some dudes on the mountain. It's dumb. It's not worth it. I'm out here to enjoy this. I'm out here because I love it. So I'm not going to let those things negatively affect me. It's not going to happen anymore. I'm going to try to look at the bright side of things. So I walk back up, grab my pack, and yeah, I'm ticked. It is what it is. We get back up to the four-wheelers. They follow me up the trail essentially because that's the way they have to go back to their four-wheelers. And I'm still mad at this point, so I kind of say something, and I don't remember exactly what I said. Just something about hunting etiquette. And they tell me their side of it. They thought that the bull had already busted when they went down to their point. Who knows what actually happened? Is what it is. Doesn't matter. Whether or not I agree with it, it's irrelevant. They have like a 2-mile walk back to their four-wheeler at this point, and they had already dove off the one side and came all the way up and gained like 800 feet plus. Like, it's a crappy hike. They were working their butt off. There's no question about that. You can't deny that. So they start the walk back, and it's windy and super cold at this point. And so I make the decision, like, I try to remember, like, what would Jesus do in this scenario? He would help them. So we offer him a ride back, end up giving him a ride back to their four-wheelers, coming back, loading our four-wheelers back up, and then taking off. That's the end of day 4. Day 5 was wild. We got into bugling bulls all day, like literally from before first light. We are chasing bulls all day long, and the morning happens, and I try to my preference is just be patient. Like, I like to get into bulls, let them bugle, and I like to let them talk on their own, and then us close distance, and then I'll start calling. So we'll locate from a distance, and then we'll get to that like 300 yard window-ish, and then I like to just sit down and be quiet unless I have a really good idea what they're doing. So this happens. We sit down, we're quiet, hear where the elk are headed, get an idea, let the wind change, let the thermals get right in the afternoon, and then we start making a play down to where they had gone for the day. We get down there in the afternoon and get in a screaming match with a bull. He was in a wallow. We ended up kind of trying to dive off to this little ridge to get down to that wallow. Well, our timing was poor. He decided he was going to go up the opposite finger, the one that we were coming down. And so he ends up 70 yards from us, but he ends up winding us because he had came up when the thermals were still coming up. He had come up that opposite finger. So we essentially had to bridge the gap, go between that draw to get on the same ridge as him to try to get a shot. And as soon as we did that, he was above us. So no shot ends up happening there. We bump him. And as soon as we bump him, there's another bull that's that's still bugling there. And he's like 250, maybe 300 yards away. So we sit down to wait. And we sit there because I want that bull to give his location away, because we don't know exactly where he is, but we know he's kind of in this little drainage. So we sit down and we're waiting. And I'm sitting on a little slope down below Matthew. Matt's like 7 yards above me, right? And we're sitting there, and Matthew, I can hear some kind of like some moving around. I didn't think anything of it. We've been sitting here for like 30 minutes. And then all of a sudden I hear Matt say, "Chris, bear." And so I look up over my shoulder, and as I do that, there is a bear like 12 yards from Matthew and like 17 yards from me. And my first instinct is immediately like, "Matt, grab your bow. You still have a bear tag. Like, shoot that thing." And Matt's mentality in this scenario is like, I'm about to get mauled by a bear that's 12 yards from me. So Matt grabs his bow real quick. That bear kind of turns, walks up the hill a couple of steps, and I just whitetail bleed at it. And that bear stops, turns around. Actually, he never even turned all the way away from us. He just kind of side-hilled up. So he stops, and he stands up on his hind legs. And I'm like, "Matt, 20-yard pin, shoot him." And bear kind of sits back down. He's kind of looking at us and looking around, trying to figure out what's going on. And so he's got some brush in front of his vitals at this point because he had gone behind some brush. So I whitetail bleat again, hoping that this bear will stand up, and he does. Meh. And that bear literally stands up on his hind legs and looks down at us again because he's quite a bit above us. And Matt center punches this thing and absolutely crushes this bear. He hits that bear and he rolls like 5 yards, and it's a bloodbath. Matt circles around to the side, puts a second arrow in him that wasn't needed. The Evolution Outdoors hide that he put into this bear was super lethal. Like, it opened up a giant wound channel on this bear. Two of them, the entry and the exit, was giant. So bear was dead within 15 seconds and was going to be dead within like a minute. Second arrow wasn't needed, but I'm a fan of putting them in and putting arrows in animals until they're done. So super cool experience. Matt was able to kill that bear, and we were both jacked for him. And what a wild, like, adrenaline dump, like bear on top of us essentially. And then bam, Matt just punches this thing right in the chest with an arrow. It was so cool. I was so pumped for him too. I've never killed a bear with my bow. And so for him to be able to do that, it was awesome. We were definitely on cloud nine. We process the bear, get it out. By the time we get back to camp, it's dark, but we do get it out that night. And then next day comes. That's day 6. It's pretty slow. We don't get very many encounters on that. Then we get to day 7, and we get into some country, essentially the same drainage system where Matt kills his bear, just a little bit of a different area. And we hike in the dark and get into a spot where it's kind of like almost at the top of a little ridge system. I let out some cow calls, and a bull answers immediately right at first light. And this bull answered like within 200 yards. So I start glassing where he was, and I see a 5-point come out in this open pocket. And I was like, oh yeah, that bull wants to come in. Like, you can just tell he's coming to look for that cow call. So we get Matt set up in a position, and there's a little elk trail that'll kind of come up to where he's at. And I start cow calling, start bugling. That bull comes in on a string. Boom. And I could see he had a spike with him too. So he comes in on a string. I see antler tips in the brush. Matt and him are, I mean, obviously from my distance, it looks like that bull's on top of Matt. And Matt doesn't end up getting a shot. That bull was 30 yards from him, too thick of brush. And I'm like, man, I cannot figure out why that bull didn't close the rest of that distance. And when we walked down there ended up being this, like, I don't know, 2-foot wide diameter log that had been fallen on the other side of that brush. And I just don't think that bull wanted to commit enough to cross that log. He was super interested, but he's kind of at the point like, I've come this far, you guys can come the rest of the way. And doesn't end up committing, so we don't end up killing that bull with a spike. And later that day, we get into another 6-point, super narrow, like, young bull, but he's kind of a cool bull too, because he's got great time length. He's got great genetics. I just think he's young. That's why he's super narrow. We get into like 75 yards of him, and just doesn't work out. He ends up bugling his whole way away from us, and we chase him, play the bugle game. And as I'm in on this bull, though, keep in mind, I have 4 people on the ridge above me bugling. Like, literally everyone's trying to hunt each other, essentially thinking they're all elk, and we were the one that was chasing the real elk. It was a mess. And that's super discouraging. Obviously I've talked about that already, but all right. Day 8 comes. We locate a bull that morning, glass up a bull and a cow. Couple cows. I think he's got 6 or 8 cows, if I remember correctly. And as we're sitting there glassing, Matthew, I glass up a spike on the ridge closest to us as well. This spike's only like 400 yards. And I'm like, Matt, there's a chance you can go make a play on that. Like, I would, you can circle around, get to this little timber pocket or this little aspen pocket, and I bet if you cow call, that spike will come running in. And Matt, but I'm like, you're also going to have to put your running shoes on. Like, you're going to have to cover almost a mile, like, in about 10 minutes in this steep country. And he does. Man, he laces up and gets his boots nice and tight and makes a run for it, and gets into a really good position. And what ends up happening is that spike comes into his cow calls on a string, essentially, comes around, and the wildest thing happens. I'll just tell you exactly what happens, because my perspective, I couldn't tell what was going on. But that spike kind of comes around to his cow calls, and I can see the spikes getting close, and that spike is at like 20 yards. Matt's at full draw, but there's brush as he's walking through, and he's going to clear that brush and be 20 yards, maybe inside 20, with a perfect broadside shot. And in that brush, there was a doe. Well, that doe jumps up. That spike didn't know that doe was there, and the doe didn't know that the spike was there, vice versa, right? And they literally both scared each other. That spike jumps up, takes off running up the ridge. Doe takes off, and then they both stop. And then that spike stops broadside at like 45 yards or something like that from Matt. Matt shoots, had been at full draw for quite a while. I don't know what happens. He shoots, spike takes off. We end up finding out that Matt gut shot that spike, hits him way far back. There's gut matter on the arrow. Obviously, everybody knows usually how that ends. So it's terrible. It's the worst experience. If you haven't experienced it as a bow hunter or even as a hunter in general, I pray you never will, but you will. It sucks, but it happens. So Matt hits that spike back, and after talking to him, it's probably a combination of things. Bubble might not have been perfect, and then being at full draw so much, there might have been a little bit more float, and maybe he got excited and punched it a little bit. Who knows? In that scenario, all things that can be learned from. I've hit animals in bad spots and did not recover them as well, so sadly it can happen. And Matt was devastated, man. He really was. He was pretty crushed, which is totally understandable. So we look all day, all through the night, don't end up finding that, or all day long. He looks all through the night, don't end up finding that spike. That same day, in the evening, when it gets to the point where it's like, okay, we're essentially not following blood. We've gridded all this. And there was hardly any. There was literally like 3 drops of blood that we could follow. And there was elk tracks all over that little ridge. So it was tough. I mean, it was a hope and a prayer to try to recover that thing, but we gave it everything we had. I end up going to the spot where I had bedded that bull and those cows. And from there, I end up sneaking into that timber pocket that they bedded in. They weren't in there, but I end up hearing them one draw over, and I can hear that bull just kind of doing the same quiet little dark timber bugles. So I end up making a play on them. Based off the way the thermals were, I had to drop down and then cross this creek because they were pulling down this creek bottom and they were already feeding up it. So I knew I was going to have to try to run to keep up with them, essentially. So I do. I start trying to keep up with them. I crossed the creek to the side that they were on. Well, when I did that, they crossed to my side. Go figure. I end up getting to like 97 yards of that bull and his cows. And he's a decent 5x6. He was definitely going to get shot if he was inside a bow range at this point. And him and I have a chuckling and a bugling match. And he kept like trying to pull his cows down. Like you could tell that he wanted to come find out what was going on. And he was chuckling at me and screaming. And his cows were the ones that eventually, after about 5 minutes of that, just started headed up the hill. And he begrudgingly followed them. He stayed for about 5 more minutes at 120 yards, but just there was no play from where I was at. So, and then I think we're at day 9 essentially. Slow morning. We get to some bulls that evening. Find some bulls that evening and some smaller raghorns, which was super weird. So I ended up finding some raghorns. The one raghorn that was like super dinky raghorn, but he had like 30 cows and he was running cows everywhere. And all the bigger bulls that I saw would only have a couple of groups of cows, but there honestly weren't very many big groups. But this raghorn had raghorn satellites around him and was running a ton of cows. I never did see any good bulls in this spot. They were all raghorns, but it really wasn't something that I wanted to shoot either. So I decided not to make a play on either of those bulls that potentially, who knows how things would have worked out. Day 10 comes. Keep in mind, we have 2 days left. We end up finding glass bulls up at first light. They're couple miles away. So we make the trek all the way around, hunt them towards afternoon and evening. We get into a position where I had saw them go into a little timber pocket. And as we're working our way down there, I let out a bugle, and instantly within 100 yards of bull answers, like we got right in on top of him. And I'm like, oh, this is happening. He like turned, you could hear him starting to come. I'm like, oh yeah, game on. So I run up to some brush where I know I can get some shooting windows. And as soon as I do that, I get swarmed by bees. Literally, they like start attacking me. I got stung in the face twice. One like right above the eyelid, right above the eye, and then one below the eye, and they're like attacking me. I take off running. All the elk blow up, obviously, in this scenario. They blow up. I run. I try to get back on them. It's not happening. And like after 5 minutes, it's obvious my face is instantly swelling up. A little bit of pain, but that's not the issue. The issue is that I can literally feel my face growing. I hunt the rest of that evening, get back to camp that night, and when we get back to camp that night, actually, before we get to that point, we weren't able to get back on those elk, so we hit a little master vantage glassing point that's right there, and I glass up the really big bull, that 320 class bull that I was trying to kill. Backtrack too. I forgot to mention this. Matt kills that spike 90 yards below me, a cow and a calf cross. I run down there. 120 yards below me. I run to the edge of the hill thinking that maybe there's a bull in front of them. Well, right after that, at 98 yards, that 320 class bull crests over, and he was already on the run. He must have winded Matt on the other side of the draw and was just moving now. So I never was going to get a shot or a play on him. But anyways, find that bull again in a different timber pocket, where I'm pretty sure it's him. He's got a cow and a calf, and he's big. And find him that night at dark. So we're like, okay, perfect. Got a game plan for in the morning. I did not hardly sleep a wink because all night long I could literally feel my face swelling. Woke up the next morning and almost couldn't see. It was on my left side. Almost couldn't see out of my left eye. But last day we're still going to get after it. I get out there. We get in a nasty little storm. I end up having to set up the tarp multiple times. Wild lightning storm, rain, everything. Hunt that day. By mid-afternoon, my eyes nearly completely shut. It was nasty. And at this point, it's like starting to affect everything. It's affecting my sinuses. Can't hardly breathe when I'm walking, etc. And we hunted that day and wasn't able to turn that thing up. And that essentially ends my personal elk hunt. I've got one more trip that I know I can make, which is a couple days later. And I'll get to that in a minute. Chase can cut this. I'm going to use the bathroom. Hopefully you didn't miss me. I don't think I was going to make it. Whew. Okay. So I have 2 more days to elk hunt after that hunts, and my plan was to go up solo. That's been the plan from the beginning. If it doesn't work out, I got one more weekend essentially, right? I have a buddy that drew an incredible archery tag. It's you do once in a lifetime type tag. So he had not yet killed a bull, and so it was a no-brainer. I'm like, okay, I'm not going hunting for myself at this point. Like, let's go help him. And we go out, and I spent 2 days helping him. We have tons of encounters. It doesn't quite work out, but we got into the best elk hunting I have ever experienced in my entire life. Like, I'm talking bugles from dark to dark. And at one point, we were inside of multiple bulls, well over 300, like stud bulls, literally fighting, like antlers clacking inside of 120 yards, just crashing into each other. One bull's got like 6 cows, and he is running off every bull that comes in there. And we're trying to get in and get a play. And we never did get a shot in that scenario, but it was insane. Like literally ears ringing from antlers crashing together. We had so many cool experiences. We got into a timber pocket, and like I said, I like to get into timber pockets where I know I'm close to bulls and then just sit down and listen and let them talk on their own. We did that. Thermals weren't great for us to keep pushing, so we sit down, we wait, eat lunch one day, and I hear like an obvious bugle change from just the standard locations that we're hearing of bulls talking, like, oh yeah, bulls are up now. Okay. So I stand up, and as soon as I stand up, I'm not kidding, 18 bulls crossed inside of 100 yards below us with no shot. Like, they just started pushing cows, and bulls were pushing off bulls. My buddy passes on multiple different smaller satellites kind of in these scenarios, on one smaller satellite for sure that was within bow range, but we just didn't chase some of the other ones. It was cool. Super cool experience. There's bulls everywhere in that situation, in that timber pocket, and it was awesome. And there was one really, really big bull. That doesn't work out that day. As we're walking out that night, our goal was to literally not to bump elk in the dark. We're walking out with no headlamp on, and there are elk inside of 200 yards. Like, there's literally no way to get back to the side-by-side without walking past elk. Like, that's how surrounded we are by elk. And as we're walking out, there are literally bulls glunking, fighting, and screaming all within 100 yards. At one point, a bull came, I think, within 20 yards chasing a cow, and I literally thought we were going to have to defend ourselves. And like, we're going to turn our headlamp on at that point, but we were almost going to get ran over, and we're trying to do everything we can because we still have one more day after this one, like, to preserve it. Like, I don't want to bump everything out of here, right? It was insanity. The 2-hour walk it took out of there, that happened the entire time. Like, it was such a cool experience, and it was super cool to share that. It was the coolest 2 days of elk hunting I've ever experienced in my life. And it never quite just panned out for us to where he was able to harvest a bull, but it was special. He ended up going back and killing a bull later on, like a week later, but it was cool, man. It's been a really, really special year for me. I've learned a ton, which is super important. One of the biggest takeaways, man, archery hunting's hard. Like, it essentially starts where rifle hunting ends, right? And getting you within bow range and having everything go your way is not easy. I think it's important to try to stay grounded, like I said, and try not to get too low because it's really easy to do. But enjoy the little things. Like, this is something so special that we do. Watching elk behave the way they do, whether it's public land, over-the-counter bulls, or, super hard to draw tags, or private land, whatever it may be, like, watching elk behave like elk is so special. Like, it's so neat. And we only get so many of those Septembers. Like, don't let the, this hunt's really hard, and the people, or the XYZ, don't let any of that affect you in the future times, right? Like, because we're only going to get so many hunting seasons. Like, enjoy the moment while we can. Yeah. It's, it's about the memories. It's not about filling tags. Like, yeah, I want to eat elk meat. I'm going to do everything I can to eat elk meat all year long and to fill tags. But really, it's the memories. Cherish them. You're going to have those forever. You really are. Those are something you're going to pass down to your kids, who are going to pass down to their kids. And make sure that they're the right memories. Because like I said, I've been the guy that wanted to fight somebody on the mountain in the past, and it's just not worth it. I wouldn't want my kid to do that in the future, right? So I'm the one that needs to set that example. And I'm the one that kind of sets the precedent for my family and sets them up for that. So I think it's important to enjoy those moments because they won't be around forever. So that is my recap for my 2025 season. And I'm going to try to make it out and get my wife on a cow or a spike. She's 31 weeks pregnant right now, so super pregnant. And she'll be even more pregnant by the time you hear this, with our second kiddo, like I said. So it would be cool to see her get it done. And it's kind of one of those scenarios where I should be able to have my son there, who's 3 now, and he literally lives for hunting and excavation, essentially. So Dad's able to be Superman right now, so I'm going to relish in these moments and take him on every hunt that I can and let him experience everything that I can. But we will end it with that. I do want to read a comment that we got on a recent podcast. This is from the Steep Country Outdoors podcast that we did with Dick and Richard. So this is from Will Flowers. It says, Angry Dick got mislabeled. He was tranquil Dick the entire episode. this was another great one. Thank you guys for sharing. So, well, thanks for sharing that. Remember to like and subscribe, leave a 5-star review. It really makes a difference with the algorithm. And then share the podcast. If you got somebody you think will enjoy it, share it. So, all right. See you guys on the next one.
Until next time, keep your eyes on the summit. This is the Mountain Dude Podcast, signing off.